listening in. Um, it's probably been a week since I did my last live YouTube video, but I felt compelled to do this video because what has become very apparent over many years, but certainly over this last 3 years since the whole COVID event, is that there are things that are very detrimental to people's mental health. Now, they're not detrimental necessarily because they are catalysts for mental health issues or for anxiety. They're not detrimental because they're trauma. They're not detrimental because they represent some kind of damaging experience in somebody's life. But they're detrimental because they're counterproductive to anybody who wants to be well. And by the term well, what I mean is wellness is the absence of disorder, is the absence of illness. So somebody who is well is physically, endocrinologically, mentally balanced. They're sustaining their body and their wellness through the ingestion of the right amount of food and the right amount of lubricants, and they are moving as much as they should in order to perpetuate what they were given at birth by genetics. Because all people pretty much are born well, save for some genetic issues or maybe problems at birth, but most people are born with wellness. They're born in physiological balance, and all of their internal systems are working together to maintain that balance and therefore to maintain wellness. It's what happens after birth that gives rise to disorder. If you're born into conflict or into an environment that is negative, you can be negatively influenced by that environment, which can cause disorder. You can ingest things or be exposed to substances or data that causes disorder. But disorder doesn't happen for no reason. Disorder happens when your internal mechanisms aren't coping with whatever it is that they're confronting. So disorder is caused. Now, a good example of that, for example, is unfitness. We're born fit. It's what we do with our bodies that either maintains or fitness or causes unfitness. And unfitness is disorder in effect. It's a simple example of the situation, but it's an effective one because it is absolutely true that some people create disorder, physiological disorder, by lack of activity, for example, or ingesting too many calories, or other things that affect the physiology of the human body. But there's one thing that has caused probably more damage than anything else in society and in social development over the last 20 or 30 years. There's one influence. Now, when I was at school, for example, when I was 7, 8, 9, I had an anxiety condition. My school had about 200 kids in it. And in that school were a group of people that suffered with anxiety conditions. I knew of myself and one other, but it wasn't talked about, it wasn't known about. All of the people in my year, there were 30 people in my year. I went through 7 years of school with those people. And to my knowledge and visually and knowing what I know now, I was the only person in the year that suffered with severe anxiety. There were others who at times acted out some kind of behaviours that could have been associated with anxiety. But it wasn't, but there was nobody taking time off like I did or seeing doctors or taking medication like I did. So the deduction from that and my experiences through the subsequent years is that over the last 20 to 30 years, or maybe even 40 years, there has been a dramatic increase in the amount of people, especially young people, suffering from anxiety-related conditions. So what's that about? We can look at things like the increase in medication use, or we can look at, like everybody's looking at the moment, at vaccination. We can look at social decline. We can look at, commercially led influences. We can look at society on the whole. But the absolute truth is that when I was a kid, despite having anxiety, what I was acutely aware of in comparison to now and the interim period in the last 40 years is that children have been subjected to a constant barrage of ever increasing amounts of data. And I don't mean productive data. The people I knew growing up were far more capable of taking the knocks. They were much more capable of going into situations and finding solutions themselves. And they were certainly more less vigilant. They were less aware of the frailties of life because they just weren't thrust in people's faces. For example, when I was 10 or 11, I had a little motorbike and I used to take it over across this golf course we lived near to some wasteland, and I would spend the whole day. Between the ages of 11 and 15, I pretty much spent my whole weekend without a crash helmet on a 125cc motorbike that I'd built, filled with petrol, doing whatever I liked, and my parents didn't even ever come over and check on me. Why? Because the assumption was I was going to be safe. And my assumption was that I was going to be safe. And all of the people that I played with and we went on bikes with and we built dens and swings and tree houses, the assumption was everybody was safe. Occasionally, somebody would break their arm or get knocked unconscious. I knew of that happening twice when I was a kid. 2 arm breakages and 2 people knocked unconscious. But they kind of came round, got up and carried on playing. But now, young humans are so protected from harm, are told about the vulnerabilities of life, about, oh, we don't do this because, the outcome could be something really catastrophic. Why? Why are we telling kids this? Because actually, statistically, the truth is that most kids live through it. Unless they're living in a war-torn country or somewhere where there's a particular threat, most kids survive childhood. Yes, they get the bumps. They might even break their arm or their leg or crack their skull occasionally. But most kids, phenomenally more than in ancient times, live through their childhoods and live on to be strong adults. So why are we constantly bombarding them with awareness? And I'm coming to this term awareness because that's the title of this video. Awareness is the problem. Awareness is the problem. If you go into a school of young people who have no awareness, other than the fact that they're young people that are there to learn and they're being subjected to data that will give rise to knowledge, and that with that knowledge they can then continue through life and achieve and become fulfilled. Other than that, why do they need to have vulnerabilities and potential risks that are probably statistically no risk at all to them, highlighted to them in the classroom? Why do we constantly need to bombard kids with stuff they don't need to know anything about? There was a huge push at one point about mental health and awareness in the classroom. And it was at a time, probably about 12, 13 years ago, when my staff were constantly contacting me and saying, "Oh, we got another kid, and he did this thing at school, and suddenly he's got panic attacks." If you are unaware of frailty and have the potential for damage or danger thrust at you constantly, it's going to make you more fearful. Fearful. If you have a predisposition to developing an anxiety condition and you have that same data thrust at you relentlessly, it can activate your anxiety condition. Why are we seeing an escalation in anxiety in children? Because the data they're receiving is both inappropriate, it's unnecessary, and it is at a high level, fear-provoking. So why are we doing it? Because it creates a tick for those people delivering it. There's a commercial aspect to it where people are making money from this. For example, mental health first aid. Mental health. So the name suggests that if you've got a mental health condition, you're going to get first aid. In the same way as if I cut my finger, first aid is going to apply something that will stop the bleeding. In other words, something that will address the actual physiological problem. Mental first aid isn't that. What mental first aid does is it equips people to teach other people about mental health. I was at a mental health first aid event, and they said, the first thing that was said was, anybody can suffer from mental health. And I thought, is this for real? Anybody can suffer from mental health. That's like saying anybody can suffer from wellness. Mental health is the positive state of mental wellness. So if you've got mental health, it means you're well because you've got mental health. What they meant was mental ill health, that anybody can suffer from mental ill health. Well, first of all, not everybody can suffer from mental ill health. You have to be predisposed to it to suffer from it. Not everybody can be in some way have a mental illness activated. Not everybody. In the same way as people have vulnerabilities There are only certain people that can suffer from certain conditions. There are certain conditions that anybody can suffer from, but mental ill health isn't one of those. Not everybody can suffer from schizophrenia or from depression or from some other degenerative brain injury that is true mental ill health, because those are mental ill health. Anxiety isn't mental ill health because there's nothing wrong with your brain. So how can it be? Anxiety is not related to mental illness or mental ill health at all. It is not a mental illness, and yet it's categorized as such. So why are people having all of this nonsense thrust at them? Anybody can suffer from mental health. What a nonsense. And from there, it degraded, the whole presentation degraded into pure nonsense. And not only was it misinformation, but it was negatively influential. There are people at the end of that presentation who are sat there questioning how well they were, that had previously never questioned it. Now put that on a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old in a school. Have you ever suffered from mental illness? No, not that I'm aware of. Well, are you sure? Well, no. But what do you mean by mental illness? Well, have you ever felt a little bit insecure? Well, yeah. Have you ever felt a bit fearful? Well, yeah. And have you ever felt anxious? Well, anxiety is fear, isn't it? So yeah, anxiety isn't fear. Anxiety is disorder. Fear is a response by the human body to react to a threat. That's what fear is. It's not even an emotion. It's a response by the adrenal glands. The misinformation and the focus on getting this awareness to everybody is what is causing the problem. Will anybody ever see this? No. Will they ever admit to it? Pretty much no. When I go into a school and I show them the error of their ways, when I show them why what they're doing is so negatively influential and is causing distress, they go, oh, crikey, we've got to stop that. Everybody, stop what you're doing, because they've got the truth. But the problem is there are so few people that are prepared to speak the truth. And the reason for that is manifold, or the reasons, but primarily because there's commercial gain. If you're going around schools giving presentations about mental health and creating awareness, and you're getting paid for it, and the school feels it's benefiting because they're ticking the box on their list of things they should be providing in the school, then everybody's happy, except for the people that are being affected by it. And that number is growing exponentially. Hence the massive pandemic of mental health suffering. And that's what they call it. So mental health is good. Mental ill health is bad. Anxiety is bad. Fear is good. We have to get these terms right. We have to use science. We have to fix this problem. But awareness is the problem, folks. It really genuinely is the problem. Take care.